this life was all I ever wanted.
I'm not leaving. Not yet.
I was hoping you'd say that.
We gotta hit the streets, make some money.
People like us must destroy people like him. Buckle up.
Get Showtime free at Showtime.com.
Saturday, the UFC gets back to action, this time for the first time in Nevada since the pandemic started. They got approved for it yesterday. Different story for a different time, but let's talk about the main event. Former UFC welterweight champion Tyron Woodley gets back to action after 15 months off against the rising sensation Gilbert Burns. BC, I start with you on this one. To me, this is one hell of a main event for a lot of different reasons, but let's focus in on this. Tell me what you think the stakes are in this welterweight main event on Saturday.
Well, first of all, Luke, I love this fight. Love this fight. A great fight. The stakes, you could be legitimately looking at the next, I said next, welterweight title contender. Look, we know what's sort of going on right now. Kamaru Usman trying to draw on a big opponent, using names like McGregor, like Masvidal, even though Dana yesterday with Phil Murphy of ESPN kind of said, look, it's either going to be Jorge or Colby for Masvidal or maybe no one else. But look, if someone comes out there, meaning Woodley or Gilbert Burns, and puts on a spectacular, quick performance, you just might see them get subbed in right away for that title shot, and both would be deserving an incredible 5-fight win streak for Gilbert Burns, in which he's completely well-rounded his game in such impressive fashion to add some striking to that already great jiu-jitsu base. But really, I think the story of this fight is the 38-year-old Woodley. This is the crossroads, okay? We're going to miss everybody. We may be missing him pretty soon if he loses this fight. This is his opportunity to prove that loss to Usman was nothing but an aberration. And Luke, I did talk to Tyron yesterday. I was expecting that, angry, sort of edgy, maybe defensive Tyron Woodley. He's calm and confident entering this one. He can't really put a label on why he looked so bad against Usman. I know a lot of us have said maybe he was juggling too much, trying to be too Hollywood. He just says mentally he wasn't there. So however you chalk that up, if he comes out and beats Gilbert Burns like we probably would have predicted him to do, let's say a year ago, it kind of puts to rest the idea of him laying that egg against Kamaru and the idea of him being 38. He's got a chance to get right back in there among the truly elites.
I think you said it exactly right, BC. This is truly, for Tyron Woodley, this is a crossroads moment. 38 years old. He turned 38 in April. When he took the title from Robbie Lawler, that made him the oldest welterweight champion in terms of how old they were when they grabbed it. And when he lost it to Kamaru Usman, that also made him the oldest in terms of how old they were when they lost it. You look at the other greats like a Miletich or a Hughes or a St. Pierre, most of them won it in their 20s, lost it in their early 30s. I think Pat Miletich lost it at 33. So on the one hand, you're right, Tyron Woodley has done things at a more advanced age relative to other great welterweight champions than those other great welterweight champions. He was better longer later. On the other hand, this is a division that trends young, not by accident. To be 38 years old, coming off of a 15-month layoff against a rising Gilbert Burns, having looked pretty not great in your fight against Kamaru. I mean, I had Kamaru winning all of those rounds. You could maybe even argue one of them was 10-8. I think, in fact, someone did score at 10-8 along the way. There are a ton of questions here. It feels like the guy who beat Darren Till is just a long memory ago, but it would be very, very foolish to sleep on Tyron Woodley. So for me, who Tyron Woodley is a modest betting favorite heading into this, I think that's right. He deserves to be the favorite. For me, if he wins this, I don't think he gets a title shot, BC. I'll take issue with your argument there. However, I do think it sets him up right in that space. He's already the number one contender in terms of his ranking, but it gives him a first shot opportunity at a returning Colby Covington. Maybe it puts him in the Jorge Masvidal sweepstakes. Maybe a rematch with Kamaru after one more win. I don't know, but I think that Colby fight makes sense. On the other hand, as you alluded to, if Gilbert Burns wins this, he's going to jump into the top 5. Last thing, if Tyron loses this, that will be 2 losses in a row and now he'd be losing to somebody outside of the top 5. It's one thing, BC, I think you would agree, to lose to Kamaru, who we both probably believe is not only the champion, obviously, but the best welterweight on the planet. There's no shame in losing to Gilbert, but those are not equivalent things at this stage. It would say a lot about whether he's coming or whether he's going.
Yeah, and the reason why we said this is a crossroads moment, because if he's going, he's not dead, but he enters into celebrity fighter, the second half of Rich Franklin's career. Let me find a catchweight. Let me find another big name I can match up with to sell some tickets. We don't normally cheer for fighters, Luke. And by the way, talking to Gilbert Burns yesterday as well, one of the nicest guys ever. You have to be cheering, so to speak, for the run that he's been on, the ability to round out his game, just the joy he shows in the cage. But I will say this, there is something in my heart right here for Tyron Woodley. I don't think he got a fair shake ever from Dana White when he was on top. I don't think even the fans give him the credit for how great that title reign was, how he disarmed and took away the greatest skill from each of his opponents and essentially beat them at their own game. I know Tyron can get whiny. I know there's some reasons why people don't always love him. But there's a big opportunity for him to stick it right back down everyone's throat once again. And, I think this division's better with him in a key spot. I want to see him get this opportunity to really prove himself and bounce back from such a tough defeat in which it was so one-sided. And maybe in his favor, Luke, is this. Gilbert Burns never gone past 3 rounds. He's not afraid. He says, I welcome the deep water. But if Tyron Woodley can control distance and fight the fight on his terms like he was unable to against Kamaru Usman, there is a gap in experience. This is a legitimate step-up fight for Gilbert Burns. With high risk comes reward, of course. But let's not count out Tyron so quickly.
No, certainly you shouldn't be. I just mean his back is up against the wall a little bit in terms of what he's up against. I suspect his back will be against the cage in that 25-foot cage they're going to be in at the UFC Apex. But one thing you alluded to,
that's going to be interesting, Luke.
Yes, it's going to change the fight a little bit because Tyron likes to go backwards. Gilbert likes to go forward. So it's like, on the one hand, you're going to have Tyron in the very place that Kamaru was able to do great work against him. On the other hand, when you look at some of the losses Gilbert has had, it's from rushing in from the outside. And Tyron has that great pull counter with the right. So it could get dicey. But I want to focus in on one thing you mentioned, which I thought was right on the money, BC, which is, I don't think Tyron can just get away with a win on Saturday. Yes, of course, a win is significantly better than a loss, obviously. But remember, he butted heads with the UFC management. And I agree with you, it's not fair. I think even like 2 weeks ago, Tyron posted a video that I had done about how he's underappreciated on his own Instagram page. And there's a lot about what he did during his title reign that never got appreciated. That being said, he wasn't the favored son of the UFC. Whether you agree with that or not, it's just a reality. I don't think he can go in there and just eke out a win against a guy who used to be a lightweight. He's got to go in there. I don't know if he has to get a finish, BC, but it's got to be dominant one way or the other. Otherwise, the title shot sweepstakes, whether they're right there or even 2 steps beyond, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's a good point. And maybe the small cage will end up producing the urgency to make Tyron Woodley have to bring out the very best of him. And, we never saw that against Kamaru Usman. I mean, not only was it in the end, a bad style matchup in a way, he just never was. He wasn't there, Luke. He never happened. He never flipped the switch. We never even saw him being willing to go out on a shield. He just wasn't there.
Look, if Gilbert wins, and you mentioned he's a nice guy, he's the nicest guy and a decorated combat athlete. You couldn't say anything bad about Gilbert Burns. And if he earns this opportunity by beating Tyron, then he earns it fair and square, and that's the end of it. But I think something would be lost in MMA history if Tyron doesn't fight Colby Covington. I just firmly believe that. And if he beats Colby Covington, I think he's entitled to another title shot at that point. About Jorge, I don't know because they're boys. I guess we'd have to see. But I think there's fights that go away, and I'm not saying it's Brock versus Fedor, but I want to see that fight. I think you want to see that fight. I think the fans want to see that fight. You got to get through Gilbert Burns first.
This life was all I ever wanted.
I'm not leaving. Not yet.
I was hoping you'd say that.
We gotta hit the streets, make some money.
People like us must destroy people like him. Buckle up.
Get Showtime free at Showtime.com.